Welcome back to the Mage Meetup, where you listen to a wizard talk about the things he likes and hates in gaming, at least the overpriced games that I can hate on from a distance, because I wouldn't even touch them with a 10-foot stick out of fear it might accidentally trigger that damn Apple Pay haptic and put me in financial debt. The title of every Spider-Man Universe Daily Bugle headline: big budget prolific games in the industry are now $80, or at least they're about to be, as we draw down on the Christmas Eve of the first enemy wave of sticker shock being with the Nintendo Switch 2 launch title of Mario Kart World, the game that we now know being the first to embrace this newfound S-rank tier price tag. At this point, the price is nothing new, and honestly, the whole topic has just been reused and recycled ever since it was first announced, kind of evoking the same feeling as logging thousands of hours into Breath of the Wild just to see that Tears of the Kingdom uses the same damn map. And like the sequel Zelda title, I want to add a new layer to that map representing this entire conversation, because I'm sure that by now you've all have noticed that the internet time, it just moves really fast as hell. Like, by the time you reach the end point of a 30-second YouTube short, you're already 2 trends behind. And I can't help but notice that that's starting to be the case with players' whole reaction and pushback to the $80 Nintendo games. I mean, obviously it's still bad. Players don't like this. Like, I don't know anyone who's insanely just happy to pay $80 for a Nintendo game outside of the ones who might have paid stock into Nintendo. Pretty much everyone is mentally disgusted, but upon thorough wizard observation, yes, I am in your walls, more and more people are, I don't want to say accepting it, but being more willing to weather the storm of these higher priced games, at least on the Nintendo side of things, since they have the most momentum to charge for these new $80 games, with them having a new console on the horizon. So for that, I only want to talk about Nintendo and them charging 80 Mario coins for their big games coming out, because out of every other publisher, they're most likely the ones that will stick to this price tag unless something just drastic happens. I mean, Borderlands 4 and their weird CEO can try this shit if they want to get bargain bin early, but there's a plethora of reasons that people have eased off the attack button they were spamming with those Treehouse Live Purge comments a few weeks ago, and one of them is just using logic of inflation and how people have sort of expected to pay more for games based on how we basically paid the same price after inflation in the 80s and 90s with those game prices. Basically, if you don't already know, games that were worth like $50 or $60 in the early gaming generations were worth around the same price or even more than the $70 and $80 games of today when you count inflation and just how that pricing just changes over time. The thing is though, due to gaming sort of being more of a niche and damn near not as big as it was then as it is today, the game prices for the longest time just weren't dynamic and growing with the production cost that it took to even produce a video game. So it kind of maxed that at $60 for a very long time until it reached its second prestige in 2020 with the jump to $70, and now it's just boosting its account freely with the $80 and beyond that we're charging. Developers for the longest time have claimed it was hard for games to reach a profit at the lower tier price tags that we were used to, which just fueled them to charge even more as decades went on in these generations. So with that in mind, people are claiming that with all these factors at play, it only makes sense that these games are costing as much as they do, and they use it as a way to either, justify buying these titles as a way to support a growing, healthy industry in that sense, or the grand opposite being a reason to pull out of this and just remove their ties out of gaming altogether because they feel it's been a good run and just the good days are over. And a few weeks ago, while it did feel like more people on the general internet were on the side of that second reasoning, based on the Nintendo Switch 2 pre-order numbers and all the games being sold out everywhere that you look, the majority of players, or at least enough buyers, give justification to Nintendo that this idea will just work. But then again, outside of the whole analytic perspective, you also just have the more general purpose of a Nintendo console that people have when they go into buying into this new generation, because as far as we can tell from Nintendo's publishing, these new $80 game price points are going to be exclusive to the new Switch 2 first-party exclusive games, with asterisk on that, because the whole remaster shit is just an entire can of worms that I don't want to talk about in this conversation right now. Most players are likely buying a Nintendo Switch 2 or really any Nintendo console when you think about it, mainly with the idea of buying the games that you can only play on that hardware, which is usually only a limited number of games compared to the full number of like third-party supported titles in that whole console's library. Like as of right now, the Nintendo Switch 1 in its 8 years of being in the market has 72 first-party games, which is a lot, don't get me wrong, but through almost, its whole decade lifespan, those games were periodically spread out through all their respective release dates. And there's no doubt that the Nintendo Switch 2 is likely going to do that same thing. So if you only care for those games on this system, only buying them around the time that they come out and spreading out your purchases can arguably be manageable even at $80, depending on how much you make and just were willing to give to gaming. And that just ties directly into the biggest thing that people are claiming to do now, and that's just be very selective with the game purchases that they have going forward. And that whole philosophy, man, that's where this wizard falls into that whole totem pole. I'm gonna buy a Nintendo Switch 2 eventually, mainly for the next Zelda game, 3D Mario, the new Donkey Kong Bonanza, and possibly a new age Mario Maker, even though after that last game, Nintendo's gonna have a really hard time squeezing $80 out of me for whatever this new sequel title is gonna be, but I digress. You see, in this conversation, we're talking about Nintendo fans specifically. In this scenario, you likely are only using a Nintendo Switch 2 console and would hypothetically only care about buying Nintendo Switch 2 games, since this is the whole reason you're even buying into the generation to begin with. So it is so much easier for fans of that nature to look at the whole scheme of $80 games and obviously feel the burn when they do eventually pay that price, but not as bad as someone who probably is in multiple platforms and paying $80 games for just a myriad of different titles. And hell, when you think about it, being selective might even mean not buying every first-party game that comes out for Nintendo Switch 2 either. Some players are only going to be in it for the games that I just listed, maybe their own select games that they're waiting to come out for the Nintendo Switch 2. Unless you're a completionist, I doubt that you're even gonna care about all of the first-party games that Nintendo puts out during this generation. I mean, that's just how it is for games. The whole thing is though, which kind of formulates the entire problem in some sense, is that of the $80 games that Nintendo does charge, I feel like they're all going to sell incredibly well, or at least decent enough for their freaking shareholders that are breathing down Nintendo's neck right now. With that success, it will give Nintendo the idea of an inch, which we now know that they will almost always try to stretch into a mile and charge even more for all their games just across the board going forward. And since this is one of the most influential gaming companies in the entire world, I have no doubt that they will follow another domino effect like we see right now, to which the rest of the gaming industry will think they can do what Nintendo was doing and get away with it, and overall just turn this entire gaming market upside down. Of course though, I don't know, I might have to leave room for doubt, because with how tight everything is and how the budgets are just, going lower and lower, a lot more people than usual will undoubtedly boycott some of these new game prices and just wait for sales. I mean, Deku Deal's website traffic has been insane these past few months, because just looking at the $70 or even $60 price tag back when that was a thing, not every game is going to be worth that price and will be a banger that you feel will be justified of the new $80 price tag. I mean, I'm still a firm believer that Mario Kart World is nothing worth $80, especially since they will likely not give you all the DLC going forward for free, and you'll probably pay even more when it's all said and done. So it's just a really weird situation. But just speaking on the closed ecosystem side of Nintendo, this company has undoubtedly opened the floodgates of really crucial pricing, and they now have to really just tread very lightly going forward with how much they think consumers will go to pay for some of these games, which ultimately, man, I don't think that they have that much to worry about. I mean, they're still going to get away with $80 games in my opinion, since they know what games people are more likely to pay at that price point, since some games like Donkey Kong Bonanza are still at that $70 price tag. But given their strong nature of only being able to play Nintendo games on Nintendo hardware, they definitely have the upper hand in this whole pricing situation.